It was such a nice surprise. I'm really happy you reached out. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, so happy to be here too and to meet you. Have a conversation together. It's gonna be so good.
You make me feel like 11. Smoothie, 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 smoothie. 다 들어가라 너 smoothie. 다른 생각은 하지 마. Yeah, we stuck in here. So don't let, so don't we. 숨 참고 let's dance. After life, you and I is more than like L-Town.
Yeah. Where are you from?
I'm originally from France.
Yeah.
I was born in Lyon,
Leon.
and then I grew up in Paris until I was about 20 years old. And then I moved to Texas for 10 years.
Texas.
Yeah.
Could you give a quick intro about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Alawn. I'm a music producer, top liner, and mixing engineer too.
Yeah.
I've been like heavily involved in K-pop for about 6 years now.
60 years.
And 6 years, yeah. And
Six?
I've been
Yeah.
6, yeah.
Okay.
Not 60.
Yeah.
And I've been like, yeah, lucky enough to have worked with most of my favorite groups, you know, from IVE,
Yeah.
ITZY, KAI의, NCT, so many. So yeah, just having so much fun now, like living here and being in the middle of the whole culture and music and everything, and just continuing my K-pop journey here, you know.
Mm-hmm. How did you find out about my channel?
I obviously already knew your work with HEYA that I really loved, and then I was on YouTube. I spent a lot of time just watching videos about like new gears, interviews, like Gear Lounge, all that stuff. And then your video came up, and I started watching a few interviews, and yeah, I really loved the aesthetic of it, and I love the setting too. Like I love the studio, I love the view. So yeah, I thought it'd be really cool.
But because of your presence, you're kind of making it more extra like beautiful out here. Because like the sunset, like the sun setting on you,
Yeah.
your outfit dripped out, everything.
I appreciate it.
So he's saying like it's just perfect for the studio.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is Kurt from our team.
Yeah.
What's up?
Nice to meet you, man.
He is here to have this interview.
So I'll be here, just hanging out,
Yeah.
and just in case, having a hard time, I'ma hop in. You already know what's good. Good to have you,
Right.
brother.
You're the man.
Where are you from?
I'm from Korea. Born and
Really?
raised. 한국에서 태어났습니다.
No, your English is so good.
I heard you're living in Korea now.
Yeah.
When did you move here?
I moved here in February this year.
Uh-huh.
So it's only been seven months already.
Uh-huh.
But it still feels very new. But I really love it. Like I just think the lifestyle is so amazing here. I honestly wouldn't want to live anywhere else right now in the world. So it feels the most at home. I just love, it's so safe. The food is amazing. All my friends live here. And obviously my job in music is here, so it makes it so much easier to meet with the companies, the A&R, the artists, and just like be here full time. It's really amazing. I love South Korea so much.
How do you start out doing music?
Oh, I started very young when I was about 15 years
yeah.
old. So my dad was the marketing director at Universal in
Universal.
France. Yeah, for about maybe 13 years.
Yeah.
So I grew up like listening to music and all kinds of artists. I remember like going home every Friday. He would come home with this huge box of CDs with all the new releases from Universal. Like I would wait for him to get home and just run to the box open and like, see all those new albums from like Jay-Z, Eminem.
Yeah.
But I just fell in love with music. And then when I was 15, I started obviously being like fascinated by producers like Timbaland, Pharrell, Kanye, and so I started like just learning how to make tracks. I think when I was 15, I asked for Christmas for an MPC 500.
Yeah.
It was the small one that had batteries, and that day like just completely changed my life. Like I would literally spend day and night on the MPC learning how to program drums and all that stuff. And then after that, I moved on to Ableton. and just started making full tracks, learning programming and all that stuff. And then when I was 17, I started doing like music catalog work for Warner Chappell in France. And then I was in a group. We started releasing music in France. And then I moved to Houston and I started like recording like all the big rappers over there. I did some stuff with Snoop Dogg and Florida and just like all the big artists in Houston like Paul Wall and Slim Thug and, you know, so many artists over there. And just building, you know, my journey. And then randomly in 2019, my team got a call from SM Entertainment saying, oh, we're doing a writing camp. You know, would you be interested in coming to do it to write K-pop? And I knew nothing about K-pop. I didn't even know what K-pop was 6 years ago. And so I was like, yeah, of course, like always down to go on a new journey, you know, discover something new. And so I flew to Korea and I just completely fell in love with like everything, the culture, the music. I remember, so it was my first camp and they showed us NCT Superhuman and EXO Monster.
Yeah.
And that was my first two songs that I heard. Like, I think they're the perfect representation of K-pop at the time. So it was like, wow, like it's like 6 songs in one, you know, this is crazy. The music video was so impressive. And then the more I learned about K-pop, the more like fascinated I've been about it. I came home for that camp. I studied very hard, like the structures, the melodies, the chord changes, because it is very different, you know, less and less now, but especially 6 years ago, it was very specific. And then I came back 6 months later for another camp, and I was much more prepared. And then during that camp, that's when I did a lot of my first big singles, like NCT Punch, like Wavy, Kickback, 100 by Super M, KAI의, like and then just from there, I've been like nonstop, you know, working with so many different artists. And
그러면 그때 처음 참여한 송캠프에서는 트랙 메이커로 참여한 거예요?
I was as a producer.
프로듀서.
Yeah.
트랙?
Track, yeah.
In the Houston, the first time, like when you arrived there, you started out as a mixing, recording engineer in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I had to pay my rent. I had to pay the bills. Like I was just doing engineering sessions most of the time because I moved to Houston not really knowing anyone. Like it was always my dream to move to the US at the time. And I worked on my visa for like 6 months and then moved to Houston with this guy who was sponsoring me and had a studio in his house. So I was just working from there. But I knew ahead of moving that I would have to like find my own clients and just, you know, hustle to like make a living at first. So the first few months I was like charging, I think, maybe like $25 an hour, and I would like make a free track on the spot and just give it to rappers and just build like my name, you know, and like and that's how I started. And then over the month and everything, I got more and more clients, and then I was recording every day, and then I started producing like some bigger stuff on the side, and it took time to really build, you know.
되게 자연스럽게 다양한 경험으로 이어졌네요. 처음에 꼭 뭐 프로듀서가 돼야겠다, 믹스 엔지니어가 되겠다 이렇게 정확하게 있진 않았던 건가요?
Yeah, and still is to this day. Like my main focus and passion, I think, is like being like producing records, writing, that I love, and then the mixing engineer part kind of came in later. I think it just came in naturally because, of course, I've always been obsessed with like mixing, and like I'm a big like music geek, you know, with new plugins, new gear. Like I love all of that.
Yeah.
So I just always like been fascinated about mixing and learning new techniques of how to make it sound better and all that stuff. So when I had my first K-pop cuts released, I wasn't always very happy with the way the mix sounded. So then after a while, I started telling the record company, oh, like, if you're gonna cut this record, then can you please let me mix it too? Of course, at first the companies were like, but you're a producer, you're not a mixer. And I was like, no, trust me, like I can mix very well too. So it took a while for them to like trust me on that side, because it's very not common for producers to be like professional mixing engineers too. So, but then as soon as they heard my first mixes, everybody was like, oh my God, wow, like actually it sounds so good. Then they started sending me all their other tracks that I didn't produce to mix. And then I started being very busy with mixing as well. So now my time is about like 50-50, I think, with between producing and mixing, just because I get so many requests now to mix all like the big like K-pop releases. So now I'm having just as much fun doing both, and I'm very happy with like being established as a mixing engineer and as a producer. I have passion for both equally now, like definitely.
와, 이게 이제 내가 상상했던 거랑 되게 다른 게 지금 알라는 보면 일단 믹스라는 관점이 그냥 sounds better, 그러다 보니까 사람들과 더 하게 되고 이런 과정이 있는 거잖아요, 그렇죠? 사실 이제 크레딧을 봤을 때는 막 믹스도 많고 트랙도 많고 하니까 약간 이 사람 어떤 포지션일까를 궁금했었는데 그 궁금했다는 게 되게 좀 좁은 시각이었다는 기분이 드는 것 같아요.
I do. I
So
really do.
it really grew his respect on
Yeah.
you. Even more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
저도 되게 비슷한 포지션에 있으면서 좀 궁금한 것들이 있었어요.
Yeah, of course.
I started as a singer.
Amazing.
Yeah. Then become a songwriter and track maker.
Yeah.
Later got into mixing.
Yeah.
But when it became a job,
Yeah.
it also got painful in some
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Sometimes I was feeling limited creatively because at the end of the day, mixing is about what the client wants.
Yeah, that's true.
So I've always been curious, how do mix engineers stay creative? You write music and mix too. How's that experience been for you?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely, it depends on the scenario, right? Like some songs, the company and the A&Rs are very specific about how they want it to sound.
Yeah.
A lot of the songs that I mix, I produce too. So those, I think I have a lot more freedom when you produce it because you're the producer of the song.
Yeah.
So you're able to really kind of just take the song to the direction you want to, and the label like trust you. But if it's a big like title track, for example, for somebody, and they have, you know how companies are so attached to the demos and they want it to sound like the demo, and sometimes the demo is so limited and like distorted that when you give them like a clean dynamic mix, they're like, oh, but it doesn't sound the same, it's not as loud, and you know, and then you tell them, yeah, that's because the demo is so distorted, it'll never sound the same, you know. So you have to kind of like tell them, okay, compare it to the demo, but like turn the demo down to compare. And you know, I mean, when I feel like when a company goes to me for my sound, they know me for what I'm known for as a mixing engineer, and I'm sure it's the same with you. You know, we each have like our particular color and sound, and like I'm known to have like very clear, like in your face vocal and like dynamic and punchy like bass and all that stuff, like modern sound.
Yeah.
So I feel like the companies do trust me with the direction. So usually I feel like I have enough freedom when I do the first mix to really give them a vision. But then of course it's like so much editing with like revisions and like tiny little details and this and that. But it's a case by case, I think. Yeah. I don't know if you had the same experience, but that's how it's been for me.
근데 확실히 그 이 관점 자체가 저한테도 되게 많이 도움이 되는 게, 제가 쓴 곡 위주로 믹스를 하지만 가끔씩 제 의사와는 다른 방향을 이제 그렇게 맞춰서 리비전을 해야 될 때는 조금 고민이 있었는데, 지금 앨런의 어떤 이 접근하는 방식이나 애티튜드가 굉장히 많이 영감을 주는 것 같아요.
Yeah, I think you have to be flexible, and you know, we obviously as creative, we have a very clear vision about how we wish things sounded, and it's not always the same vision that the A&Rs have or like the CEO of the company has. So it's, at the end of the day, it's like you have to be flexible, and there's always, I feel like there's always a middle ground between the two. It's not always their or your vision, and I always try to like compromise. But if they want, okay, we want it to sound like that, I'm like, okay, maybe we can go in that direction, but what about this and what about that? It's just proposing different ideas. I also love, like, I don't know if a lot of other people do that, but a lot of the time when I'm mixing, when I send revisions, I sometimes send like 2 or 3 options for the same revision that sometimes they don't even ask. They say, okay, maybe the vocals sound too wet, like turn the reverb down, but I think it should be more. Then I'm gonna send the version they want, and then I'm gonna send them a version that's like in the middle.
Yeah.
And most of the time they will go with the one that's in the middle. So that's what I do a lot as well.
되게 중요한 포인트네.
Like give them options that they didn't even ask for. You know?
Yeah.
And then when they hear it,
option
they
idea.
will.
Korean like middle.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, because
맞아.
because with experience, I so many times like they ask me for one revision,
Yeah.
let's say like, can you boost the bass more?
Yeah.
And if I already feel like the bass is good, I know they want more. So I send them like, let's say they say, okay, let's turn the bass up like 1.5 dB. I'm gonna do 1.5 dB, but then also I'm gonna send them one 0.75.
Yeah.
And tell them, okay, maybe this is the better one, and then that's usually the one.
아, very
they go
very
for.
smart하네요.
And it saves time too because
최근에 앨런이 참여한 게
spinning on it.
네,
Collab's
맞네.
done.
이런 작업은 세션을 통해서 했는지.
I was in a part of the writing process, so I did the mix on my end, like in my studio.
Yeah.
And then we finalized it together. So I went to JYP to his studio, and then we tweaked it together to the final tweak.
Still, like your contact with from the JYP A&R or from
Yeah.
the producer?
Yeah.
Like how did the mix start?
Oh, the mix. So for this one, I believe they had different versions of mixes, but they weren't really fully happy with how it sounded. So they asked me to do a version, and they gave me just really not much direction. They were just like, just do your thing, like do your sound.
Yeah.
Like we trust you. Try something. And then I sent, and the deadline was very short, I think, because the album was almost fully done. Because I mixed 3 different songs on the last NMIXX album, and so I did a first mix. They really loved it, and honestly, I loved the song. It was one of my favorite songs in a while that I've worked on, because the production and the top line is so like live. I really love it. And so I did first mix. They loved it. We did maybe 1 revision in my with email, and then we're like, okay, it's almost done. Can you come to the studio? Just do little adjustment in person, and then it was done. And it was the same thing with the other 2 songs that I mixed. Rico, which was produced by Isam, and Podium. So same thing. Like I did the mix. I went to JYP office at the end, met with the A&Rs, and we just like fine tweak everything and then just done. It was pretty quick.
Your studio in Gangnam?
Yeah, well, actually, right now my mixing studio is in my office, like house too.
Yeah.
Because I mix on headphones. So
headphone.
every single mix I've ever done is like done on headphones. So I mix from home most of the time.
Yeah. 그러면 우리 we like Gears story.
Yeah.
What is your headphone?
My main one is the head.
Yeah,
Head 2.
Head 2.
And I recently got the MM500, the Audis, the Mini Marquin one, that are pretty good as well. They both have, I think, like different qualities and flaws, like every headphones.
Yeah.
I think the head is much better in the highs. They have way better like definition in the high end, and also like stereo width. But then I was lacking a little bit of low end and bass in the head. So then the Mini Marquin one like has really good low end. So I just go back and forth and switch. But and also I travel so much, I haven't had the chance to really mix all the time on speakers, because sometimes I go back home in Paris or just travel really all around the world all the time. So just being able to mix on headphones is what I needed, and just recalling sessions without having to recall analog gear and stuff. So I mix everything in the box on headphones, and it's much easier that way for me. And I also have the Hugo 2.
Hugo 2.
Yeah, preamp for headphones, which is really good.
Hugo 2 is a preamp name?
Yeah, it's a DAC, yeah.
DAC.
Yeah. So it's really, really good. It gives, because the head needs a good amplification to have the best sound. So
right.
The Hugo 2 is a really good driver for that.
Hugo 2 and Head 2.
Yeah.
But I heard JYP loves your sound.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so grateful for him. I met him late last year, around Christmas. He was rehearsing for a show in LA.
Yeah.
So I went to see him during rehearsal before he flew to LA. And so I met him, and he was the sweetest guy ever.
Sweet guy.
Yeah, so sweet. We talked for a while. And he was telling me I love your mixes so much. I'm telling everybody in JYP to go to you for mixes. And I'm just so happy. And ever since I've been mixing all the big JYP releases. I had been doing stuff for NMIXX for a while. I've done a few for ITZY too. But I think when I did Gold and Imaginary Friends for ITZY. He really loved those mixes. So then he asked the team, oh, who mixed this one, you know? And then they said Alawn. So then after that, it really started being more and more and more, and I started mixing everything. And I'm doing a lot of stuff for JYP Japan too. So I just mix like Nizu, new single. Last year I did the Stray Kids single as well, which was really cool. I always wanted to work with them, so I was really happy about that. And then like Kickflip, Nexzy, Twice, just everybody. So yeah.
So many
Yeah.
tracks.
Yeah.
그러면은 처음 하게 된 믹스는 어떤 믹스인지?
What was your first ever mixing
JYP.
JYP track?
Oh, Joey, that's a good question.
오.
I would have to think about. I don't remember.
아, 굿 퀘션이지만 기억이 안 난다.
I don't know. It was. I think it was either NMIXX or ITZY.
있지.
Yeah. Oh, actually, it was probably the track I produced for ITZY on the. It was called Love Is.
Yeah.
And I think it was on the Crazy in Love album. So
Crazy
that one
in
I
Love.
produced, and I mixed it as well.
아 맞아. 나도 왜 그러냐면 나도 궁금한 게 언젠가부터 JYP가 사운드가 좀 바뀌는 시즌이 있었는데 그게 알런의 흔적인지 궁금해가지고
Thank you so much for saying that.
이게 알런의 파워인가 봐.
This must be your Alawn power.
Oh, thank you.
사실 나도 굉장히 믹스를 좋아하는데 아까 말했던 것처럼 좀 이 믹스라는 작업의 어떤 크리에이티브에 대해서 한계를 좀 느끼고 있었는데 알런을 보면서 완전 생각이 바뀌고 있는 것 같다고.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just in life in general, I try to not take anything too seriously and to just have fun with like everything I'm doing, because at the end of the day, every project that we work on is like a tight deadline. Everything is urgent. It's always busy. It never stops. So at one point, you know, you have to just tell yourself, drop all the stress, just have fun with it, because it's never gonna stop being urgent. It's never gonna stop being like, you know, short requests, short deadlines. So when you kind of just, there's only so much, there's only one of you, there's only so much you can do. So just take one thing at a time and, you know, do the best you can and just have fun with it, because like there's no point. We're doing music. We're so lucky to just make a living from like, you know, working on music, that then the whole world is gonna listen to it. So I keep reminding myself, like, if it's a song that it maybe is struggling a little more, it's like so many revisions, I keep telling myself like, okay, it's hard right now, but
Yeah.
you know, maybe like 100 million people are gonna hear it in the next month, so it's worth it. Like, just have fun with it and just not take anything like too seriously. You know?
이야.
Because like we tend to forget like the impact of K-pop in the whole world and how just big it is. And even like one of the reasons I love also living here is that I get to witness like success per se of certain songs even more than in the rest of the world, because now I'm like grocery shopping or I'm at 7-Eleven and I hear my song playing, you know, and it's like it's a totally different feeling when you're like, wow, like, you know, I worked so hard for, you know, on this song, and now it's like the whole world gets to hear it,
Yeah.
and it's the best feeling ever.
맞아요.
And then like there's certain songs that really are, you know, so big and they have millions of views or listeners, and at first, like, I mean, you don't want to listen to them and have regrets of, oh, maybe I should have like pushed a little harder to make this perfect or this and that. That's why I think like always give your best. That's my mindset to every single like song that you're working on. And you should be just as proud from any song that you're working on, whether it has 100 million plays or 10,000 plays. You know,
Yeah.
you should be able to show every song you're working on and be just as like proud of it. You know.
가장 음악의 근본적인 즐거움을 일깨워준 것 같아요.
I appreciate it.
왜냐면
Thank you so
어떻게
much.
보면은 한국 음악 시장에는 지금 되게 많은 이런 외국인 뮤지션들이 찾아오기도 하고, 뭔가 이런 K-팝 웨이브 속에서 어떤 면에서 이제 창작자들은 되게 과열된 경쟁심을 느끼고 있기 때문에 좀 그런 부분들을 좀 잊고 살았던 것 같거든요. 근데 그걸 알런이 되게 좋은 마음을 우리한테 선물해 준 것 같아요.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But it's true. Like, I mean, it is getting harder and harder with the amount and influx of people just coming to Korea for camps. And even now, like, they're doing camps in LA all the time and all around the world. So you know, I think now the typical A&R probably listens to like 3,000 songs per week maybe or something. So obviously, like, if you're already established, then, you know, you have relationships and you can use those relationships to like highlight certain demos directly to them and make sure they listen to it. But it is getting harder and harder to like get cuts for people, and yeah, everybody wants to do K-pop now because K-pop is cool and it's trendy, you know. But I think it will come and go and always change, and there's still, I think the good thing is that yes, like K-pop sound is shifting to a more like Western pop sound.
Yeah.
But even if the companies always say, oh, we want like pop Western songs, they still want like a touch of K-pop in it. So I think our strength, though, people who are already established in K-pop and who have been doing it for a while, is that we know those little, you know, tricks and codes that we need to implement in songs to still make it a good appeal to the A&Rs here, and that they will take it over just a song that is great but is just too Western or pop that maybe wouldn't work for a K-pop act.
Yeah.
I think it's just standing into your own like strength and creativity, and also at the same time like not stress about the competition and stuff, and just focus on you and just doing. I try to just every day make the best demo I can. I don't really like follow briefs or lead at all. I just go to the studio every day and make whatever I want and just make a good song, you know.
Yeah.
Because 99% of the time, like if a label hears a good song, they will take it, and it doesn't necessarily have to fall into the lead and the brief, you know. Because that's the thing. I think people who start K-pop and they get a brief or a lead, they follow it too much and they make something that's too similar to the references, but that's not the whole point. It should be just taken as like inspiration, influence, but at the end of the day, like, just make a good song every day and it'll find a home, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
굉장히 진짜 자기 주도적이고 중심이 강하게 딱 있는 스탠스고, 우리가 항상 배워야 되고 곱씹어야 될 애티튜드인 것 같아요. 네, 이제 우리 또 로고스 공식 기어에 대한 이야기를 나눌 건데요. What is your favorite
Compressor? Plugin?
Yeah.
Oh, there's like a few. There's a new plugin that came out from Mixlab.
Yeah.
It's an emulation of the Fern compressor.
Oh.
It's really, really good. So I started using it a lot on my master bus. And then compressor or Vox, like for mixing, is great too. The Waves or Vox.
처음 듣는 거야. 와, 또
It's pretty good.
비장의 무기네. Yeah. 그러면 인서트 컴프레서? Yeah, master bus, not master bus.
Yeah. Oh, when making tracks, like when producing?
Yeah.
It depends. Mostly when I produce, it's just like EQing.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Oh.
I mean, sometimes compressing. I love the OTT. Like sometimes, yeah, when I really want to like mess up a sound, you know. But I try to just like, because when I produce, I do it very fast. So I try to just EQ to make it like sound good in the session and not go like too deep into like compressing and all stuff. Because I'd like to find like sounds that already sound like good enough that they don't need too much like processing, you know. If not, I love like adding distortion and like saturation to sounds. Like, you know, Saturn 2 is really good for like distortion.
Yeah.
It depends, but I try to work fast because in Korea, most Korean producers, they come like with already prepared tracks, you know, for sessions. But I never prepare for sessions, so I just make everything on the spot from scratch. So I have to be quick, you know, while making it, because there's also like 2 or 3 top liner in the room, and you know, we have to build at the same time. So I try to build the sketch and production like very quickly so that we can start going back and forth on like the top line, and then while they're doing like lyrics and stuff, then I'm adding more sounds and building and stuff. So
뭔가 최대한 좀 빨리빨리 쾌적하게 하는 거에 포커스가 돼 있는 시스템인가 왜? 그죠? Efficient?
Yeah, I just feel like the energy is so different from when you're just by yourself
Yeah.
in your studio and what kind of track can I make? Like it'll be great, it'll be a good track, but when you just get to the studio and you're with new people that you never wrote before, the energy is like there's this kind of like magic feel. And everybody's excited, especially in the writing camp. Like I just did 10 days of writing camp with Starship, and every day was just different writers, and everybody was flying from all around the world to write. So everybody's excited, everybody's here to make like really good music. So I don't think it would have been the same to just come with tracks already made, at least for me. So I just feed off the energy and we start the session, okay, what are we making today? And then based off that, like you start going through sounds, you find like one melody you like, and then it just goes,
You need some pressure.
Yeah, I work best under pressure.
무대 체질, 코리안 세이 무대 체질.
Oh, okay.
그러니까 한국적인 질문이 생각나는데 What is your MBTI?
Oh, I am INFJ.
INFJ.
But I did do the test again
Yeah?
a few months ago, and now I'm ENFJ.
Oh, 예.
So, but like 51%.
Oh,
So
51.
only like I'm like in the middle.
Ah.
But I think moving to Seoul like turned me to
오,
E.
오히려 서울이 더 E로 바꿔줬군요.
그렇죠.
Yeah.
아하, 재밌네. 또.
But yeah, there's always when you start a session. I mean, I'm still like shy guy.
Yeah.
I think I had to learn to be more like outgoing and stuff because of my job. But especially when I was younger, I was way more shy and way more like to myself,
Yeah.
into myself. So still to this day, like now I have a more confidence per se when I'm in the studio because I have experience and I know what I'm doing, and I'm at a place now where I know, okay, like I know what's a good melody, what's a bad melody, or like I kind of know what I should do, what works, what doesn't, more quickly. But there's always this moment where you get into the studio, you talk about what you're going to do, and you're with like 3 writers that you're writing with for the first time, and then you decide on what you're going to do, and then it's like, okay, let's go. And then the writers are behind you, just looking at you, and then you're like on your computer, like, okay, let's make something. And then it's always awkward for like a few minutes, while you go through sound, and then sometimes it takes like a few minutes. You're sort of like, okay, don't worry, it's coming. And then when there's a spark, then like the whole song starts. But it's always like the beginning.
진짜 알런의 이 파스티브 에너지가 너무 좋은 게 내가 좀 평소에 단점이라고 생각했던 것들도 되게 장점이 될 수 있다는 걸 많이 보여주는 사례인 것 같아요.
I think that's the way to do it because it's unavoidable. Every session starts this way.
Yeah.
So either like when you go through sounds and you're stressing a little bit because you want to make a good song, you could either like stress and be nervous and like not talk to them, or you can just like turn around and like make a joke and be like, oh, like don't worry guys, like we're gonna find it. I feel like as a producer, it's your job to make the room like feel good and to always keep the energy high.
Yeah.
So my solution is just to laugh about it,
맞아요. 저 같은 경우에는 저도 그렇게 똑같이 생각해서 녹음 때나 이럴 때 농담도 많이 하고 에너지를 엄청 쓰는데 그러고 나면 완전히 넉다운 돼가지고 정신을 못 차리는데 알라는 어때요?
It is exhausting, even just to make a song. Like mentally, it's a full like workout, So you definitely need time after it. So like it's so important to have a good work-life balance and to unwind and just like reset or like do something else that has nothing to do with music, just like lay down or watch a movie or like go out with friends or whatever. You need a balance, because it's a lot.
이거 보면은 진짜 워라벨이 중요하네요. 어떻게 보면 최근 한국에서는 워라벨의 그 말을 좀 비하한 듯한 분위기도 있었는데.
Yeah, exactly. It's so important. I mean, obviously it's in the Korean culture, I think, to work hard and very long hours, like sometime A&Rs like still text me or email me and it's like 2 a.m, and I'm like, wow, like they're still working. That's crazy. And so it's so important I think to have a good life, especially when you do music. Like you need creativity every day. So you need to like balance it out, and because you can get burnt out very quickly. Like
좋아요. 아 근데 이제 다시 장비 얘기로 돌아와서 그러면은 혹시 EQ는 어떤 걸 써요?
Pro Q3.
Pro Q3, 4도 써봤나요?
Oh, Pro Q4. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I do have 4.
그러면은 약간 드럼 버스에 거는 뭐 컴프나 여러 가지 어떤 뭔가 플러그인인지.
Drum bus, depends on the track, but one of my favorite compressor is the Shadow Hills.
Shadow Hills.
compressor. I like that on the drums. I also use a lot of parallel compression, especially on the drums. So I would like compress so much, all the drum bus together and just blend it with. And there's one plugin I love called Dyn One by Lipwig Audio. That's really really good for like parallel compression. Just I don't use much honestly on the drum bus.
아하.
Yeah.
좀 보통 그런 플러그인을 많이 안 쓰는 편인가 믹스할 때?
Yeah, I mean at least in the individual tracks and the buses, and then I do a little more processing on the actual master bus to like keep everything like together, like parallel compression, like some saturation, and then most of the work I think for me in mixing is just like dynamically making every element work together. So like I use soothe a lot, to like in sidechain mode. So that every time the kick hits, for example, the bass will like duck.
수드로.
I do that with soothe, or like same thing with the synth, with soothe on them, and then sidechain the lead vocal to the synth to make space for that, and just a lot of like EQing like that. Mostly, yeah.
살짝 EQ에 뭐 사이드 체인에 아니면은 이제 살짝 세턴으로 드라이브 디스토션 살짝 걸어주는 정도.
Yeah, I love saturation.
Yeah.
I think the most. So one of my favorite plugin ever is called Spectre.
Yeah.
So I use that on like everything. Spectre, I think it's Waves Factory.
아하,
I
웨이브
think make
팩터
this plugin.
스펙터
유명합니다.
유명해요.
그러니까 엄청 많이 쓰진 않는데 그래도 요즘 좀 많이 써요.
아 그러네. 그걸로 디스토션,
Just for the saturation, right?
saturation.
Yeah, it's a saturation EQ.
EQ.
So it works in parallel, and you can saturate different bands independently, and it's really really good.
It's like Saturn.
Different.
A little different.
Yeah.
Okay.
좀 더 뾰족한가 보다 스펙터가. 아
Yeah, because Saturn will actually distort the whole band.
맞아, 홀
But
밴드지.
Spectre will keep 50% of the original signal,
오호.
and then the other half will be paralleled with the saturation on top. And you kind of use it as an EQ, but then the more you boost, you actually add saturation instead of just boosting the frequency.
와 그때 한번 봐야겠다.
Yeah.
스펙터도 관심 가네요. 그럼 혹시 뭐 공간계 이펙터 중에는
Go to reverb, definitely the Valhalla.
발하라
Yeah,
is
I think
king.
that's everybody's go-to. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
it
great,
sounds really
great.
good. But actually, sorry, for reverb, lately I've been using the Spaced Out by Baby Audio.
와 그것도 모르는 거야.
Is this it's Baby Audio plugin
Baby
called
Audio.
Spaced Out has
Spaced
really
Out.
really good reverb.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it has reverb and delay at the same time.
Yeah.
And you can kind of move in the middle, like and blend everything together.
yeah.
It's really good.
이거 참 심플하게 순봉순봉 하나 보다 우리 앨런 씨가.
Yeah, for vocal or even like synth or whatever. There's a Wave new plugin too called Space Rider. That's really good. Yeah.
스페이스 와이더 새로 나온 거. 맞아 본 거 같아 광고에서. 아 그러면 아까 그러면 믹스 작업할 때도 마스터 버스에 뭔가를 거는 거예요?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, even before I start the mix, I already have like my master bus, like processing like on it, and I mix into it.
Yeah.
Because that way it gives me a really clear vision of how it's gonna sound like at the end, and then I definitely send my monitors like fully limited, like loud and everything, because if not they're gonna play it against the demo and they're gonna tell me, oh, why is it so low? It's not the same. So you have to compete with the demo.
아 그러면 데모 말고 그냥 믹스에서는 혹시 그러면 마스터의 체인을 좀 어느 정도 남겨놓는지, 마스터링을 위해 데이터를 보낼 때는 그걸 빼고 보내는 거예요?
네 맞습니다. 그냥 거의 데모랑 안 꿀릴 정도의 음압과 LUFS랑 그냥 그리고 어떤 그 자극적인 거를 전혀 당연히 자기가 믹스했으니까 다르겠지만 밸런스는 그 정도 음압으로 맞춰서 마스터를 다 키고 보낸대요.
아 저도 좀 비슷하긴 한데 이제 믹스 모니터를 이렇게 자극적으로 해주면 나중에 마스터링을 했을 때 오히려 마스터링이 옛날만큼 안 나온다고 할 때가 있지 않나요?
Yeah, so we have a thing with Namu. We talk
Namu.
about it sometimes. It's because so now a lot of the time I send him my version with my mastering on, because that happened a lot with some of the IVE mixes. You know, I give my monitor and it's already loud, and then every time I send data for mastering, I take out, you know, the limiter and like a few plugins.
Yeah.
And then he does mastering, and then the company is like, oh, but it doesn't sound the same, like blah. So then, you know, he messaged me and stuff. Is oh, like, how about maybe I master the mastered mix, you know? And so it doesn't need much, you know, but he does his magic, like little bit of EQ, maybe like sometimes 0.5 dB, like final touch, you know. But he's so great at knowing exactly what to do. I don't think a great mastering engineer means like just doing so much. Like, it's not about how much the mastering does, it's about how much like he knows what to do. Sometimes it might not need, like, sometimes it might need 0.2 dB on the highs and it's mastered, you know, so it depends. So now I usually always give I give limited and unlimited version, and then he can choose whatever he prefers.
어차피 지금 얘기를 들어보니까 그냥 데모에서는 무조건 세게 하는 게 모니터는 무조건 파워풀 모니터로 하는 게 정답이라는 생각이 드네요. 맞아요.
But I have the same problem with the demo too. Especially demos.
맞아요. 저도 그런 상황을 되게 많이 겪어가지고.
It's in the same shoes.
그래서 실제로는 그냥 데모 버전으로 음원을 낸 적도 있어요.
Oh, I mean, it always goes through his stuff. He does like very little tweaks, you know. But yeah, like 99%, if that happens, it would mostly be like my mix, you know. But it's not that often. Like most of the time, I send unlimited, and then he does amazing job all the time at like making it.
아니면 또 다른 어떤 추천할 만한 장비에 대해서 할 수 있는 얘기 있는지.
I mean, when I produce, I really love the new Serum 2.
Yeah.
I think it has really good sounds. I use that a lot. Omnisphere, I just saw that they released Omnisphere 3. Which it just came out like 2 days ago.
2 days ago?
Yeah, so I have to buy it and like check it out. So I'm excited about that.
Awesome.
And then I mean, it depends. The new Ozone 12 is actually really good.
Wait, there's Ozone 12?
Yeah, the CPU though is very hard. Like it takes so much and there's big latency. But they have a new ARC or IRC 5, which sounds like amazing, and they have new bass control module and everything. Is really good. So I put that on my master bus sometimes.
개인적인 궁금함인데 저는 항상 이제 베이스의 사운드를 만드는 데서 고민이 되게 많은데 혹시 알런의 어떤 베이스 사운드 메이킹의 노하우가 있는지 괜히 물어보고 싶어요.
To me, there's two like very important things to have like a strong bass foundation in a track. Like when I get a mix, you know, I usually start with kick and bass. Like that's the beginning of every mix for me is kick and bass, and make sure they're like tight and work together. So the first thing is, you know, like I mentioned before with Soothe, is making sure that they never like compete with each other. So a lot of the time I would put Soothe on the bass and then sidechain the kick to it, and it will just duck like the low end of the bass, you know, not the entire bass, just like the low, like the sub. But also phase. It's so important, and I think too many people like don't pay enough attention to phase. So what I do is, like, sometimes it takes a little more time, but let's say you have the kick and 808, you know, the 808 most of the time will play like different notes, right? And like that's one of my like secret trick too that I've never mentioned before. So, you know, every 808 note will resonate differently. So I copy the kick into a separate track, and then on the second kick I flip the phase, and then for each note of the 808 I solo the kick, normal or inverted phase, and I see which one like fits the most, because it will change depending on the note. You know, so if you flip the phase on the whole kick, then it will be the same. So for every note of the 808 I pick which phase of the kick works the best. So there's 2 tracks of kick, you know, that like follow different phase with the note of the 808 or the bass or whatever, so that every time it's in phase.
와, 그러면 뭔가를 걸고 이런 것보다 위상을 맞추는 거에서 가장 중요하게 여기는
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so important.
와, 부스트하거나 막 디스토션하거나 이런 게 아니라 그 페이지를 맞추는 걸로만 그 저음의 에너지를 그러면 컨트롤하는 거예요?
Saturation too, definitely. Yeah, on not so much on the kick, but on the 808.
808.
Of course, I always like saturate the bass and the 808, mostly like to bring out the low mids.
Yeah.
So I don't really saturate the sub because then you get this like distorted like sound. But like the mids, I like to saturate so that like you would hear the 808 on the iPhone, for example, speaker or stuff. It's so
되게 중요한
important.
거죠.
But yeah, it's just a little bit of compression, but I think the most important is the phase and the sidechain to make sure it works together.
그 말 듣고 나니까 또 느끼는 게 훨씬 이게 딱 중요한 것만 되게 딱 하는 것 같다. K-팝을 좋아하는 또 K-팝을 만드는 거 좋아하는 사람들을 위해서 마지막으로 한 말씀 해주신다면.
Honestly, the same thing that I was lucky to hear when I was coming up from people who would reach out in the industry and stuff. But especially nowadays, I think networking is the most important nowadays. Everything lives on Instagram. So just reach out to people, like other creators, collaborate as much as possible with talented people, upcoming or established. If you're a producer, top liner, like don't be afraid to just obviously like make sure you have a solid body of work first, like because you only get like one chance and one listen, so make sure that if you're ready to send your demos and stuff and you think they're great qualities and you're ready, then don't be afraid to send it to people, reach out. I always try to respond to as many like DMs as I can all the time, and I always listen to demos that people send me. So yeah, just like reach out to people, collaborate. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Thank you,
Of
Alawn.
course. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Alawn.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
Awesome.
having me. That was so good.
I'm so
nice.
inspired.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Woo.